as a community can do better.
What do you want to tell your children about this moment?
We need reforms.
From the All Indiana Podcast Network, we stand together.
Everybody's here together, black, white, brown, everybody.
A platform for progress in our community.
We need to do a better job.
I want to show that we can be peaceful.
This is just as much our fight as it is yours.
Discussing the problems of racial inequality and solutions to combat discrimination in a conversation for change.
We'll be able to build on this.
I never in a million years thought I would embrace a cop like that.
From Wish TV, we stand together.
Conversations about race are happening around the world, including on college campuses.
And as we continue our series, We Stand Together, News 8's multicultural reporter Katira Winfrey sat down with the president of Butler University, James Danko.
We are living in a very interesting time when you have COVID, you have protests around the country. What's your take on everything that's happening?
I think this concept of all the unknowns and knowns and unknowns really talks to the complexity of what we're dealing with. Certainly the overlay of the pandemic, then the intersection with issues of racism and social injustice, and people out in the streets, rightfully so, kind of confronting exactly that particular issue. But it is indeed very interesting times. So.
And we've seen agencies all across our city taking a stand, giving voice to the talk about racism in America. We don't see a lot of universities taking that step to say, hey, this is something we need to address. Why was taking that step so important for you guys here?
Well, because it's living our history. You know, some institutions and places have to live down their history. We actually have to live up to our history. Butler was founded by Ovid Butler as a place for higher education to be accessible to people regardless of their race, their gender, their religion. And while we have an imperfect history going back to 1855, as many institutions do, we have a history to live up to. We have a founding mission and a founding principle. And so in particular, I've put out a couple statements to remind our community of the importance of that, going back to late May and on Juneteenth as well, to both acknowledge our history, but also acknowledge that we have a lot more to live up to in our own history.
And I read in one of your statements that some of the injustices that we constantly hear about, that's not your story. You didn't experience some of these things, but now that it's kind of been put in your face with the George Floyd situation and other events that's unfolded, how has that opened your eyes to, okay, this is a problem that we as Americans need to look into?
You know, I would say that our students, during my time here, I arrived in 2011, they've been fairly attuned to some of these issues, and they're very mindful of alerting us to our collective responsibility. So I don't want to say that we've lived, away from this or distance from it. We're reminded of it every day because we are like a small city, right? We have diversity on our campus. I'm like a mayor of a city where we've got people living on our campus. We've got food service, we've got sports. And so when you think about that, we're a microcosm of society. So therefore, we're not immune to a lot of the same things that we're seeing in the larger region and in the larger society. So, but what's been important for us, I think this has been a call to action around what's central to Butler, right? Our founding mission and our educational mission. And so what we can do, we could take the leadership when it comes to making sure that people are educated. Because I really think lack of education underpins racism and social injustice, not recognizing that all people are equal and people have different backgrounds, and that collective background, that diversity, is what really makes us better as a society. However, we haven't really recognized that, we haven't lived up to that, and we have a lot of work to do, and I think Butler could come to the table and take a stand when it comes to making sure we're educating the greater, not just our students, but even the greater community.
Was the George Floyd incident one of those pivotal moments that really forced you to hone in even more on the conversation with students, on staff?
Well, it's certainly, again, it was a big flashpoint, right? I mean, we see that. We just have to watch the news for the last 2 weeks to realize what a flashpoint it is. But as we've also been reminded, this goes back to, like heck, I could think 20 years ago with Rodney King, right? I mean, there's a lot in our recent and our long distant past that gives us plenty of examples. So you wonder why it's taken us so long maybe to get more alerted. But you know, it happened. It's very much in the spotlight now. So if a lot of us collectively as institutions and as individuals are called to action and finally do something to turn this around, you know, even better. So indeed, it was an important moment in time, and it's kind of grabbed our attention. And to me, that's a good thing in a lot of ways, right?
And you talk about this call to action. I was reading through one of your statements, and you talk about the Diversity Commission. Is that something that's student-led, faculty-led, or is it a combination of both?
Well, you know what I've seen, not only have I been here at Butler, but I've been at University of Michigan and Dartmouth and UNC Chapel Hill. So I've experienced this now for my 30 years in education. And what tends to happen, we're really good in higher education of forming task force and commissions to kind of, this is how we're going to solve the problem. And indeed, Butler we've had one during my time here back about 4 or 5 years ago as well. My concern right now is I don't want to think about this for a year and a half or two and then come out with an action plan, and you've got to kind of take advantage of the moment in time. You know, for example, one thing that we've already been kicking around just in this short period of time is to do an annual public award. We've had this diversity lecture series on our campus for many years, but why not recognize an individual locally and nationally who's done something to advance racial harmony and to address social injustice? I've already charged our vice presidents, our deans, our colleges, our divisions to come up with action plans in their own areas and to provide us to me by the end of this summer so that we have things that are tangible that we could take action on before our students even return to campus.
And you mentioned how vocal your students have been. Will that be used in helping form this action?
Absolutely. In fact, already I've had 4 town hall meetings, although they've been via Zoom, with our students to get their collective input, to hear about their experience. So we're addressing what's important to them. I've also done the same with our Black Alumni Association group, which has organized 2 or 3 meetings. So we're getting input from those that have experienced Butler in the past and those that are experiencing it in the present to make sure whatever steps we take, whatever action, make us better as a result, right? It can't just be one, like I say, one group's ideas. You know, it's got to be the input of many, many different groups across our campus.
So in addition to the current programs the university is working on now, they're also moving forward with a plan that has been a year and a half in the making. In the fall, students will be required to take a social justice course.
And remember, you can listen to our We Stand Together podcast at any time. Tonight's episode and others are found at the All Indiana Podcast Network. It's allindianapodcastnetwork.com.
From Wish TV, we stand together. Watch, read, listen, and be a part of the conversation online at wishtv.com and when you follow Wish TV on Facebook. Find more episodes of We Stand Together and other podcasts from Wish TV online anytime at allindianapodcastnetwork.com. allindianapodcastnetwork.com.